right now on Higher Journeys Radio with Alexis Brooks. What does ET contact look like? Is there a prototype for these otherworldly encounters, or might they be coming in through a variety of channels? Today's guests are audience members of Higher Journeys who reached out to me to express an interest in being on the show to share their unique and very different contact experiences. Stephanie from Kansas City, Missouri describes her encounters as coming through the creative channel and something called process painting, while Jason from New York City says his multiple manifestations of orb-like phenomena happen almost on a daily basis and are triggered through intense meditation. Two very different accounts, but seemingly one fundamental reality, and that is, we are connecting with a broader spectrum of intelligent life. Well, Jason and Stephanie, I am so incredibly excited to have you both on today to discuss your experiences. And we've been talking offline, and you've got plenty of stuff to share. So I thought it was time we hit the record button and get into it. You know, I want to say that although you both are about to explain to our audience what might be considered very different in their descriptions, after getting some background on each of your experiences, I certainly have no doubt that we're moving ever closer to an expanded spectrum of human experience. And I would say both of you are a testament to that. I'm so delighted to have you here. So thank you. Thanks, both of you, for joining us.
Thank you.
Great.
Thanks for having me.
And just for the record, Stephanie is coming to us today from Kansas City, Missouri. I said to her, that's where my kitty came from, Kansas City, Missouri. My famous clover paws, the famous reincarnated clover paws. That's a whole nother story entirely. And Jason is coming from the Big Apple in New York City, right? Are you right in the city? Are you right in the
heart of Lower Manhattan?
Love it. All right. We'll have some offline on that too, because my husband's actually from Queens. And is a city dweller, so great.
Yeah.
Well, listen, Stephanie, let's get right into this, because folks, to our audience, as you may surmise, we have had some pretty stimulating discussion offline about, the scope of these two individuals' experience. I'm so, again, delighted that they have been courageous enough to come forward and speak to you. So I want to begin at the beginning. I'm going to start with Stephanie. I want to begin with you. If you could, for our audience, Stephanie, give us a brief summary of your experiences, plural, because I have a feeling there are a lot of them, but something known that I have just come to know as process painting, and how this all began for you. And then I'd like you to tell us why you think this may, and I'm going to underscore may, be linked to some sort of non-human intelligence.
Okay. Well, I'll start from the beginning, which is I began process painting about 20 years ago. And just briefly, process painting is painting from the inside out, so you're not told what to paint or how to paint. And it's really connecting more into the heart space instead of up in the head. And so really what began happening about 6 years ago, the more I began my creative practice and was really getting into it more and more, the more this stuff started happening. And basically the paintings that started, not all of them, but a lot of the paintings that started to happen were of, the only way I can explain it is like otherworldly things. Just large, thin women, or maybe androgynous beings with elongated heads, long fingers, lots of light orbs, I believe, involved. And
no, if I may ask you, I'm sorry to interject, but I just want us to be clear. When you say these sort of androgynous beings and orbs, are these images that were coming to you prior to the process painting?
No, no.
or through it?
That is what's weird. And so the process painting, so I process painted for a long time before this, but it was when I shifted and ended up doing more and more and really poured myself into it that this started happening. And I didn't, and the thing about process painting is you generally don't have an idea of what's going to come because you're really just working in the present moment. And so as you work in the present moment and just really work with that heart space, your body, and how you want to move, things just start to happen. And this is what has been coming out.
So this has been happening for roughly 20 years for you, is what you're saying?
The actual, the odder stuff, I won't say odd, but the things that are unusual to me, the experiences, that has been more of lately of probably 6 to 10 years.
Oh, interesting.
Yes.
Very interesting. So let me, just so the audience knows, depending on where you're accessing the show, whether on YouTube or directly from Higher Journeys, we will in fact have some images. Stephanie's been kind enough to share some of her beautiful process paintings with us. So I'm going to let y'all be the not the judge, but have a look, and this will bring some texture, I think, to what Stephanie's describing here when you see these paintings, because they're definitely otherworldly. But let me ask you this, Stephanie. So you're saying that you were process painting for quite some time, but these more sort of esoteric-y, sort of otherworldly, I guess is the appropriate word to use, images did not come through until more recently. How much did the style vary from the more otherworldly to prior to that? Was it totally different?
I wouldn't say totally different, but it's definitely narrowed as far as what, like, I don't believe that in the early days I painted orbs or star fields nearly as much, if at all, as I do now. Mm-hmm. And a lot of the third eye stuff has come in now, and yeah.
Very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna bring Jason. Let me introduce Jason to the audience. You say hi, Jason.
Hi, hello, world.
I have been having a ball talking to both of them, and Jason, you and I spoke offline a couple of days ago to get acquainted and had a great conversation. And I had Jason take a look at some of these incredible images, and I want you to weigh in, if you will. This is a three-way conversation. I want you to, based on what you've seen, and then we're going to get into your experiences. What are you seeing in Stephanie's images?
I see amazing depictions of bodies, beings that can be seen as like human, but at the same time she has very stretched out and elongated sections that seem to be maybe part of her creative process, and in that case maybe she's tapping into something that's coming through her in her subconscious mind. She's referencing a lot in what I noticed in the third eye, mm-hmm. Which resonates a lot with me because of the way it's connected to my experience. So it sounds to me just on the surface that maybe Stephanie's connecting to another type of being, maybe another type of incarnation or type of exploration of another. I know I hope I'm not jumping too quickly into this, but maybe other lives or future lives or simultaneous lives in another place and time. Mm-hmm. I'm pretty sure people who listen to this channel definitely would explore that. But yeah, that's what comes to me when I first see it. Mm-hmm.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about, if you can, you just finished saying to me that this is very complicated to describe, but I would say, Jason, let's begin at the beginning with you. What on earth has been happening with you since 2015 that brings you here today?
Yeah, it's funny. I'm not the kind of person that's been doing this like researching for like 20 years or
that's okay.
Or I've had little beings in my room since I was 10 or anything like that. This is like a very sudden, spontaneous shift in me since 2015. Right around 2014, like the end, I got into what they call the CE-5 initiative, which is Dr. Greer is basically an ex-doctor who went into the ufology and started researching this phenomena of UFOs and meditation. And so I latched onto it somehow through some sort of disseminating of information online. And I wanted to give it a shot to see what meditation had to do with this and if this is something you can really conjure up, a sort of sighting experience. And when I had spoken to enough people online and gone through enough channels, I validated it enough because I said, so many people can't be lying. Mm-hmm. But I was, for the most part, an agnostic. But I was still like a materialist agnostic. So I didn't really, it took me a while to kind of like research and figure out that there's something going on here. So I met up with a group in Long Island, New York, and we started trying to see how this could work because most of us had some had a few experiences, but for the most part, no one's had a profound experience that I can gauge. Mm-hmm. And so we met up for a few months and trying the best that we can do to do meditative stuff, and it didn't work. And suddenly, it was just one day. I even remember the day. It was in June. I think it was June 13th, if I remember, of 2015. A few days before, my friend called me up, says, "Hey, we're going to do a meditation and see if we can get some sightings." And then I went to the beach, and suddenly they were there. These orbs in the sky were there actually before we even started the meditation, which was pretty amazing. And when I say orbs, I say like they were. It was a very clear night sky. And then you start to see like stars, or what appear to be stars, just taking off and floating away. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, pinning it down to that one moment that kind of like wowed me was when I kind of had this app on my phone that identifies stars in the sky. And then I'm showing it off to a guy that I just met. And I said, "Oh, look, here's Jupiter, look." And then, you see it on my phone. And I turn the camera around and I look at what I thought was Saturn. But as soon as I held my phone up to it, it just decided to take off. And me and my friend opened our mouths like, did we just see what we thought we saw? And he's like, yeah, I think we did. And mind you, nobody was ready yet to meditate. It just happened on the spot.
Yeah. Well, that brings up, that opens a whole can of worms in terms of, how are these... If you are having some sort of contact, if we are having some sort of contact with non-human intelligence that perhaps can not only interact with you, but even anticipate what you're about to do in a very intelligent way, could that be happening?
Well, that's what I think it got me to think about. Because once we did the meditation afterward, then the orbs started popping out of the sky every few minutes. Sometimes a red orb, sometimes a yellow orb, a blue orb. It was various colors, and they were popping in and giving us flashes like the way you would imagine your camera flash would do on an iPhone. Mm-hmm. It would just flash you, so you knew it was related to you. But then the way it came in, it started to force me to ponder those questions as to like, did it know we were coming? Why did I turn my head to the left and then it happened to pop on the left, not the right? Why one person would see it and have to point it out to everyone else, but then it would happen to me right in my own eyes when it was my time. So there was a lot of weird things that were connected directly to me that made me go home and ask a lot of those questions.
Wow. Stephanie, what are your thoughts on what you just heard?
It's absolutely incredible. And as Jason's talking, I'm thinking, it's very possible that it's so interconnected. The whole connection with all of us, and then different realms or different entities. I don't even know, but just the fact that it's very possible that they knew, that he was there for them, or that they are part of him, or we create parts of our own reality. I don't even know. It just really opens up. It does open up just so much. Mm-hmm. So many layers.
Well, for the record, folks, there's no way we're going to try to come to a resolution as to what's happening. I think what we want to just do is acknowledge that something bigger than us is taking place, that of which we are inextricably linked to, and I think that's an amazing thing. Yeah, I want to ask both of you, now, Jason, I know that you admittedly kind of came into this, as you recall, later in life through, would it be fair to say, just a fascination with the whole ufology field, you know, or is it something else? Let me complete my thought. If that's the case, and I'm going to pose this to both of you, if you were to go back as far as you can remember, even if it's just a fuzzy recollection, was there anything in your childhood that you can recall that may have led you in this direction of what you're experiencing now? And even just from a pure curiosity standpoint or from an experiential standpoint that you can recall. Either one of you can answer that.
I would say that nothing in my past nothing that I was interested in the past. I mean, UFOs were all cool and everything, but nothing more than watching the History Channel for a night when you're bored. But I think that just looking back now at my history, where I came from, my parents, my friends, my family, my circumstances, it forced me to look back at all of that, because there was a pattern that was emerging from looking back at that. And how the UFO reality merges with that is pretty strange, because I think it's energetic.
Would you be willing to share, Jason? You just, obviously I don't want you to have to divulge things that you don't want to, but you mentioned your family and circumstances. Is there any way you could give us a little sketch of what that was or is that may have connected?
It's nothing traumatic or anything. Just dealing with the different makeups of, let's say, my mom and my dad and friends and family. And like I said, it even goes into jobs also and marriage. I mean, I have one marriage that failed, and looking at that and having my father being a skeptic the way he is, having my mother being maybe the slightly hyperactive mother.
Okay. But
just looking at the actual experiences that happen, given 1 year, one moment, and just kind of reflecting and seeing, maybe making sense of it and seeing that maybe it happened for a reason, to bring me to a point today, to where I am today. And I know it sounds kind of cliche, because it's kind of like not pinpointing it to something grounded. It's very open-ended, but everything that came after was very, very, it starts to ground everything into a reality that starts to make sense to me now. But it's something, I think personally, I know I'm going on a little tangent here, but I think personally it's paradigm shifting. Not just for me, but I think for the concepts that I grab from everything that I've learned from then, from 15 to now, it's enough that if it were to be true, it would have to be paradigm shifting for everyone on planet Earth.
Yes. Well said. You're a dot connector, I can tell. You're a very aware person, and I think there's a certain recognition of patterns that some people have, where they, even though I think what you're talking about is just looking back in retrospect, family circumstances, personality styles of the people in your life, and hardship to whatever degree. And I tend to be the same way, where you are at this moment, everything prior to that had to bring you there, even though it wasn't necessarily a straight arrow or a straight line. So I do admire the fact that you're connecting dots in that way. I really do. Stephanie, what about you? I'm sorry, Jason, did you have something else you wanted to say? Add to that?
Oh, no, I was just saying thank you for that.
Okay. Stephanie, childhood. Anything that may have piqued your interest in these subjects, or any experiences that you can recall?
No actual experiences. I mean, two different things. I want to say. First of all, I was a total sci-fi nerd when I was little, and still am. And things like Star Wars and stuff got me very excited, but that was about as far as experiences go. That's as far as that would go. But sort of what Jason was talking about too, just noticing the makeup of your life and how it's led to now. and knowing that I had a lot of loss in my life when I was younger, and then later on, that sort of brought me to where I am, because of that loss and early losses, I became more of a seeker. So I wanted to know more about my own makeup and what's behind the veil and all that. So that definitely has led me down this path. I know it's part of it. Yeah.
Well, I see a correlation completely, and that is desire can open up doors. Not, and I don't mean just novel curiosity, because even with you, Jason, I think there was some, deeper than novel, certainly, but curiosity, but desire to understand the bigger picture. And I think that, again, if we're talking about some sort of an advanced intelligence that has the ability to perhaps know you better than you know yourself, that force can perhaps bring those experiences to quench that thirst, that desire. So that's definitely something that I see in both of you. Wow. Jason, let's move to the orbs for you, and maybe you can, if you can, summarize. You sent me some great video, and if you don't mind, I'd like to also link to some of those YouTube videos where you shot some of these really interesting, I would say unconventional orb-like patterns in the sky in Manhattan, no less, over the skyline. Let's talk about that. Why so many orbs, you think, in your life?
Well, it's hard to explain why I see them and I can record them and nobody else sees them. I think there's a perception issue there that goes to that bigger
when you
picture.
say, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I cut you off. But for clarity, when you say no one else sees them, even after you record them, they don't see them, or at the time that you're recording them?
No, they can see them if I point it out to them. If somebody's around me, close to me, I can point it out and they'll see it. But the reaction is a little puzzling in the sense that people tend to dismiss it very quickly. Mm-hmm. And for the most part, people don't really want to speak to someone that they don't know on the street. So if you tap somebody, it's kind of weird. So I don't expect them to suddenly, speak to you openly about what they're seeing, but that's fine. But I had a puzzling idea that why is it that such profound experiences happen right above our heads in a place like New York, and it hasn't been reported, like in the way that I would expect it to be. But for the most part, they are there in the sky. They're recordable. They're perceivable to anyone who's willing to take a look. Mm-hmm. It's just that people aren't taking a look.
Well, that's another rabbit hole we could go down, because you look up. A lot of people aren't doing that, sadly, these days, because they have their heads in where, their phones, etc. There's a lot of things happening above our heads that, unfortunately, some nefarious that people are going unnoticed. But well, that's an interesting thing, this whole idea of, craft sightings. And I've talked to countless people in the research that I've done that have commented about being in situations where, I recall speaking with someone that was in traffic on the highway, I believe here in Massachusetts, and had a clear craft sighting. And I asked her if she noticed anyone else's reaction or acknowledgement of what she saw. And she said they acted like they didn't see anything, or they weren't looking. There was no reaction. So there may be something to that as well.
Yeah, and I had, just to point out, because I've had so many experiences, it's almost on a daily basis, but I had probably 3 really profound experiences where I had a UFO fly very close over the buildings here after a meditation, and it happened all 3 times after a meditation. And I'm not talking about a light in the sky or high in the atmosphere. I'm talking about a solid ball in the middle of the night, usually at night, and what I could reference as like a blimp, like the Goodyear blimp, but instead of being an oval, it was a circle, but it was totally solid and just flew from left to right above the buildings here. So things like that, when things that big come right over your head or right over your awareness, and to know that it's in the city like New York, it definitely trips your mind,
And no one else were you ever in the presence of somebody else when you saw these things?
Yes.
And did they see them?
Yes.
Okay, so they did.
Yeah, because it was in those conditions, it was a joint meditation.
Okay, so it wasn't like that you were in the presence of some strangers and you point out, look, do you see that? I see.
Yeah, no. I mean, I definitely turn people into believers, but it doesn't seem like. I mean, there's so many people here on New York, and so many people in the country, and on the 7 billion people. I could understand why changing one person's perspective isn't going to suddenly put it on the 6 o'clock news.
Right,
you know.
right. Well, and that therein we get to the conversation, or we can, about the importance of subjective experience and how we value or how do I want to say this? Everyone is on their own journey, in a sense. Just because we're both looking at an apple doesn't mean we're seeing the same thing, or we may have different philosophies about the apple. So I don't know that it's wrong nor right. It's valuing the sacredness of personal experience. So, and it sounds like you do. Yeah.
Right. I think perception is a huge issue. I think it's probably the foundation of everything that I've come to understand.
Yeah. Well said. Absolutely. Stephanie, what about other modalities for you? Have you ever been into meditation or crystal work or some sort of energy modality?
Because I consider myself a seeker. I have definitely done some meditation, although I consider my painting to be more of my meditative practice. But journaling and prayer work in the journaling, and also chanting. I chanted some mantra chanting for years. I have sort of gotten away from that, but that is something that I have done before.
Mm-hmm. I love, you're obviously a creative type. Are you left-handed or right-handed? Just out of kicks. Are you
right-handed?
Are you really? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, they're right-handed people that are creative.
Yeah.
But I know that left-handed people tend to be a little bit more on the right brain side and thus more creative. But that's obviously not a hard and fast rule. Just curious. What about you, Jason? Lefty or righty?
I'm right-handed.
Are you really? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, you're clearly both, I would say, rooted in the right brain, certainly. So
I'm definitely I can see the analytical side of me trying to figure things out. Whereas sometimes if I try to look and explore through other people's messages and works, I notice that some people do go straight to the right side and just go to the intuitive side. Mm-hmm. And I've always wanted to understand it from that point, but also understand it from the mechanics of what the heck is going on.
Great. I think that's important. I think it's about the balance, We often, cliche as this may sound, associate so much of the right brain with the woo-woo. And I do think it's important to obtain a balance, to be skeptical, certainly discerning, to apply logic and analysis, but also be willing to say, you know what, I just don't know, and I'm just going to let it be and be the explorer in this beautiful experience. So, well, let's go from beautiful experiences. Jason, I'm bouncing back and forth, and again, feel free to talk with each other and weigh in on what each other is saying. But talk to me about these helicopters you've been seeing. Let's get back to these sightings. What's going on there?
So the helicopters is interesting because I know that, when I first started seeing some anomalous stuff with helicopters, I immediately went to shadow government type of thinking. And then when I asked a lot of people who were in the CE-5 initiative, people, even saw a few people in Dr. Greer's circle from his disclosure project initiative and his close friends, I even asked people like that about it, and for the most part the idea was that there's a shadow government and they're watching us, and apparently they can perceive mental frequencies and or perceive UFOs, and there's some sort of big dark conspiracy. I didn't like that. Something about it didn't make mechanical sense to me, because when I saw the helicopters, it didn't seem like a government helicopter. It didn't seem like, there was weird flashes of light that would happen in your direction, weird things like that. And I've heard other contactees talk about these things, and I think some people even reference it to like TI experiences, or it's like psychic stalking. Mm-hmm. To me, I think that the information that was coming through to me as I was practicing meditation was starting to come through so fast that it went beyond that. It went beyond. It went into like shifting of space and time type of direction in my thoughts. And because the helicopters, like, sometimes it would be a news helicopter, sometimes it would be a police helicopter, sometimes it would be something completely out of the ordinary. And it didn't jive, because the way they flew or the way they came in, it just seemed to be almost as if reality wasn't what I thought it was. It seems like intention had a lot to do with, like, applied intention seems to create implied circumstances.
Yeah, I'm following you, and it's very so. In other words, you were seeing manifested synchronicity, actually, because what you're saying is that the if I understand you correctly, the helicopters weren't necessarily otherworldly, but the timing of when they showed up
it was exactly. There are times that I would have an intuition to look up at a helicopter that happened to be just above my head when I was thinking a certain way, and when I looked to the left, there was a UFO. Like that. So a helicopter was needed to shunt me to see the UFO, or like sometimes that would happen with a balloon. Sometimes it would happen with something else. Sometimes a synchronistic event would happen on the ground that would cause me to shift suddenly into a different area. And that's when I had to even explore the idea of what was happening on the ground. Because obviously it's not dark government causing a car accident or causing a synchronistic event that would take your attention in that direction. There were weird things that started happening to me on a daily basis that the helicopter stuff kind of gravitated into everything.
Interesting. It's I'm thinking the word that's coming to mind, guys, is archetype. That the helicopter is sort of a personal archetype for you, or trigger, mental trigger, psychic trigger, even that. Again, very complex to break down mechanistically, but again.
And one thing I just wanted to throw in there, I'm sorry to cut you off, but I just want to throw it in there before I forget it, is that, like, I did a meditation one time looking out over Manhattan, and it triggered 4 fighter jets in formation to fly across the city. And I didn't know what to make of that. And I took a picture, but it was at a distance because I had to fumble through stuff just to get my camera on to get it fast enough. And it wasn't on the news. But then 2 days later, the same thing happened again, where 2 fighter jets went across the city, and that made the news in September of 2015. Even though the news said that it was about something else, which it said it was in New Jersey, which was not. It was in New York, in Manhattan, and it circled the Empire State Building. But I was looking at this phenomenon of fighter jets over New York City flying low, and for the most part, it seemed to me, according to the news and the history, if things like that happen, for the most part, people get nervous and people want answers, and people contact the news, and the news contacts the military, and there's always an answer being put out somewhere.
Right.
So the fact that I had no answers to these things was a little. It goes in line with the helicopter phenomenon as well.
Right. Right. No, there's definitely some significance to the helicopter for you. Stephanie, why don't you weigh in? I hear you.
Well, that's exactly what I was thinking too. Like, there was just some sort of symbolism going on for him specifically, and he talks about, applied intention, and it's dimensional and energetic, and it's very personal, and that's all I keep thinking. It's got to be. It's symbolic.
Yeah, agreed. Sort of like I said, a personal archetype for Jason.
Yes.
Wow. Yeah. Well, we're talking about synchronicity among many other things. Stephanie, what about you and synchronicity? I just can't. As I was looking at your paintings, really, I think you sent me the first set. Gosh, maybe close to a month ago at this point. Shortly after we did the show, and I put the call out for experiencers to speak. And what has occurred to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that in producing such profound work, that clearly you got some kind of insight into some other environment that you're bringing through. What about synchronistic experiences for you? It would seem to me that too would go hand in hand, not maybe away from the canvas. I mean, just in your life. What about that and intuition?
Well, the more I do this sort of work and work in the space of the heart, my intuition does definitely blossom. And in fact, that's what led me to contact you. Because unlike Jason, my experiences are all internal. And so they don't manifest outside of me so much. So I've sort of dismissed things. And, but the more I hear people talk and the more that I do this, then I follow this thread. And the longer I follow the thread, the more things I uncover. And I like listening to other people's experiences and just knowing that what is happening is my own experience, but also it's a small piece of a much bigger thing.
Right. I agree with you.
Yeah.
To both of you, would it be fair to say, and thank you for that, Stephanie, well said. Would it be fair to say that from your perspective, are you there?
Yeah, you just cut out for a moment.
Oh, okay. Yeah. No, we still got you. We're hanging on tight with Skype. Skype's you're our friend today. But we have the audience that's listening, and I dare say that there will be those listening that will perhaps have their own aha moment or feel a little bit more comfortable in the fact that they've been having experiences. From my perspective, guys, there's something going on in terms of the scope of reality expanding for many people. What do you think in terms of where we are now? And again, we're in a time we still sort of abide by a linear model of past, present, and future. One could argue that all time is simultaneous, but nonetheless, in this physical time that we're experiencing, is there something going on, do you think, with people and their experiences expanding?
I'll weigh in on that because I definitely believe there's something. Obviously, it's happening personally with me, but just I have a small painting studio here, and we all do process painting together. And even the round table discussions that we have afterwards, it's incredible. Now we don't talk necessarily about ETs or even labeling, but there seems to be this expansiveness and this awareness, and that a veil is being lifted, and we are seeing things for what it really is, and that that happens on all spectrums. It's not just the inside of what we're uncovering as we paint, but also what's happening outside. From the presidency and what just everything that's being sort of revealed to us. So I definitely feel like there's something going on.
Okay. And the people that you're sort of sharing these insights with, are these people that you've process painted with for years that are, you can put sort of a line of demarcation of, wow, something's different now versus before. So, right. Are these people that you've known for quite some time?
Some of them are, and some of them not maybe a year, but okay. It's just a different quality of conversation that's happening. And also I feel like a different sort of desire and hunger that people are wanting and have. Yeah.
Interesting. I agree from my perspective as well. I feel that fervently. What about you, Jason? What do you think?
Yeah, I agree with her wholeheartedly. I think, but I'm scientific minded. And so when this started happening to me, I really thought that I had to change my perspective of even what science was telling me, because I think that the observer, me, I'm having my own experience, and it's validated in a lot of theoretical realms of science. But I think that even though the world looks a certain way, and there is shifts going on in the world itself, like Steph was talking about the presidency and our political system and everything, but I think that it still comes down to the observer creating reality for himself or herself. And I think there's a perspective for the individual, but I also think there's a perspective for the collective. Sometimes my thoughts come through in a form of kind of channeling, because thoughts come in like Steph does, where she has channeling thoughts that bring her inspiration to draw these paintings, I get inspiration to understand things that I have no idea why I'm even trying to understand.
Wow. Isn't that great, though? Isn't that such a spontaneity, right?
Yeah, there's
And
no benefit at all. It's just raw desire for knowledge.
yeah, yeah. I think that's just an amazing thing to be grateful for, frankly. I think there's some of us that just tend to have a proclivity in that area. Both of you are clearly that. So I'm just thrilled with both of you. Oh gosh, where do we go from here? I want to, Jason. We got to talk about your PK experiment. That maybe you could kind of highlight for people, or maybe I will. I had a chance to take a look at the cloud dematerialization is what I'm going to call it. And I'm going to have you explain it a little bit. And then I want to get into something that Stephanie, I know you know this name, Mary Rodwell, a dear friend and colleague of mine, that will put your experience, Jason, your PK experiment into context. So, Jason, why don't you tell the audience, if you would, briefly, what you did? And I'm also going to link a video so people can see it for themselves.
Okay, so it was something. It was like these coincidences that later on you start to realize that they're actually really synchronistic. But the night that we had the orb sightings in June of 2015. One of the people in the group says, "Oh, we're so lucky to have such a clear sky exactly where we're looking." Mm-hmm. And the reason he said that is because a big giant storm of clouds, not a storm, but just a lot of clouds were coming in, but they seemed to be breaking apart exactly at the moment, at the place where we were looking. So we were looking at the Big Dipper, and right at the Big Dipper, it seems like they were totally just breaking apart. But around the Big Dipper, it was solid. So I dismissed that experience completely at the time. I just said, okay, well, we got lucky, or maybe the ETs are doing this. But then when I took the experience home with me and I started trying to replicate the same experience, that's when I started to notice the phenomena where the sky was actually changing with intention. And that started to open the door to answer a lot of questions for me as to how meditation works and why the UFOs are even happening with that distance. So when I started doing videos to make sure I document it and picking clouds in the sky and making them dematerialize with my own intention and my own breath work.
You have an amazing video. I may have looked at two. No, I think it was just the one where it was a clear blue sky. And now let's face it, folks. We haven't talked about the geoengineering thing, but I'm sure the two of you are familiar with that phenomenon, that man-made phenomenon, and I've covered it a bit on my show. But I want to say for the record, and we'll link the video, I don't think these were man-made clouds. I don't think these were trails, but rather little puffy clouds, that appeared to be natural. But I was quite impressed, and I hung in there and watched the whole thing. Not too long. But there were two separate clouds that came in at different times, and you, in essence, did an intention experiment of dissipating the cloud. And you could always argue that it was coincidence, but I think it's worth a little discussion here about our ability to affect the environment. And this is where I want to bring, and I'm pointing out Stephanie, because I know you're a fan of Mary Rodwell's work. And perhaps you recall, she has talked about, obviously, these new children or new humans coming in, of which I agree there's some phenomenon of a different type of human that's gracing this planet. And one of the abilities that she has talked about of these, particularly children, are their ability to communicate with the elements. And in some, and even many cases, change the structure of water and, of course, natural clouds are condensation and other things. But that is a feature, as she has mentioned in her work, of a lot of these new humans, that there is the ability to interact with weather and in fact, change weather patterns. And, of course, many indigenous cultures were known, particularly the Native Americans, of doing rain dances. So I don't know that this is completely foreign to people. But I found, Jason, your experiment to be incredible, and I definitely want everyone to see that. Have you done... Go ahead. I'm sorry, please.
To just go a step further, which, as if that wasn't, for me, that was incredible enough. But to go a step further, I woke up one morning with an intuition, and this happens a lot. I get intuitions that are very bizarre because they start to become really synchronistic, where I thought that I can, alter weather patterns without looking at the sky. And then I got this idea to download an app that shows you weather patterns from around the world in different webcams. And when I did that experiment online, I found that I was able to do the same experiment even if I was here and looking at the webcam in, let's say, Florida or California. This happened at a distance. This wasn't even happening like just with me looking at the cloud.
Right.
And that blew my mind even more, because now you're talking about sort of like, I guess, quantum entanglement, if you want to put a name on it.
Well, non-locality would actually be, and yes, quantum entanglement as well. That's involved in all of it, but the non-local phenomenon of having the ability to affect matter at a distance. So, yeah, interesting.
Yeah,
Wow.
so that too came into my awareness. How it came in, I have no idea. I woke up one morning with the idea, but yeah, and the implications of that is, to me, is like staggering. Like, I don't even know if that's something that that should be classified, but I mean, it's just amazing to me that you could even do that. But I've done it, I've repeated it, I've done it over and over again, and it works.
Yeah, isn't that something? I have tried a couple of experiments like that, particularly because I'm a sun lover, and these days, as many of us know, we're seeing less and less of the sun. And I've done I will admit, I've done little sort of chants that I've made up, little rhymes and little things to intend the weather to shift. And I have, on a couple of occasions, been successful. So I think that the capability is there. Well, listen, we're winding down. We've got about not even 15 minutes left, a little bit less, and there's still so much I wanted to cover. But Stephanie, let's move over to you, and let's keep on the Mary Rodwell. Hopefully Mary's ears are burning, and I'm hoping to have her back on the show soon. What drew you to her work?
It's so funny because I'm not even sure. It's one of those things, like when you do follow intuition and you follow that thread, sometimes it's almost things that you're led to, you almost don't even know why. I mean, I can guess that it's probably, as I go further down, I like to call it the rabbit hole of just, who am I? What is this? What is all this that's happening in paintings and creativity, just in thoughts that I might have, or feelings. And I stumbled across a talk that she gave on YouTube, and this has been a few years ago. But it just blew my mind about the children that are coming into this world now, and it correlates quite well with what as I continue to create and paint, I just know that we are so much more powerful than we can imagine, and we all have our own brand of magic that I feel it has been sort of. We have so much stuff like on top of everything else, like what we know, what we possibly came into the world with, but then it's been taught out of us, learned out of, I don't know, it's by all the different systems. I feel like these are parts, we have the same parts in us, and I'm not really expressing that well, but I just felt connected, and I felt a sense of, okay, good. This is good. This needs to happen. We need more and more of these children on the earth, and we all need to, if at all possible, uncover that part of us too. And so it just, and then from that one YouTube video, I just kept watching more and reading her book, and her newest book, and so it's amazing what she's bringing.
She's brought and is bringing quite the contribution to all of us with her revelations of who she's interacting with. That, and by the way, you were very articulate in saying that. that was well said. Absolutely.
And
Well,
one thing I'd like
yes.
to add, and I don't know, this may be a little difficult to comprehend, but this connection that we have in the world to each other, I think it's complex, but I think the problem is that we live in a society that's a little difficult for a lot of people to be able to even express a lot of these ideas, because I think the connection is so profound with each other that even in this society, I think for a lot of people, talking about that connection infringes on the flow itself.
That's interesting.
Sometimes.
Wow.
Yes.
And I think because we live in a society that's kind of like what we perceive as like a dog-eat-dog world, I think that a lot of people who do experience this connection, a lot of times don't even explain what the connection is, because by explaining it, you're interfering with what the connection can bring.
That is very deep and complex, and I think I can tell from Stephanie's affirmative nod. She gets it, and I think I do too. I mean, there are a couple of ways you could slice this one. And why did you bring this up at the end of the conversation, Jason? This is something we should have started out with. Oh my goodness. What I hear you saying, among other things, I think there are a few things embedded in that, is that there is a recognition on the part of probably all people, although not consciously, that we are connected. And that connection is so profound. It's just like getting a telepathic download, and a person asks you to tell them what you were downloaded. There are no words. It's nonverbal. And of course, we're a verbal society. And so first, right off the bat, you've got an issue there. There's a connect. You know, when I was younger, I used to, and this is before I got into a conscious pursuit of these subjects and these ideas, I always felt instinctively that people could read other people. And I used to say to my friends, you know, people can read you like a dog can read whether you're afraid of them or not. What I was saying is we're intuitive. We know, instinctively, we know we're connected. And yet we live in a society that makes sure that the acknowledgement of that is atrophied, or the acknowledgement of that is stays dormant. Then of course there's the ego angle of, you know, being afraid to show who you really are and to acknowledge that more powerful side. So I don't know if I regurgitated that exactly like you did, Jason, but you're right. I absolutely agree with you that there's we all know we're connected, but we live in a society that does not want to openly acknowledge the connection in the way.
Yeah, no, and I think that you're right. I think the ego, I mean, you know, not the street term of the word ego, but the more spiritual sense of ego. I think it's trying to solidify in the fact that each of us have our own experience, and it must be me, and I'm in control of my own world and my own experience. And I think that we as a society still don't want to let go of that to be like an immersive society, or like what Michio Kaku, I've heard him talk, the scientist, talk about like a type 1 civilization. And I think that's where we're headed. As long as we dissolve the ego to the degree, not that the ego is bad, but to dissolve it to the degree that we allow this to happen.
Absolutely. I agree with you. I think I know where you're going there. There's some steps to take. We could get into the individual versus the collective and the merits and demerits of both sides. So, but maybe we'll save that for another time, or maybe an offline discussion. But listen, in closing, I know our cameras are turned off, so you can't see me grinning from ear to ear. You both have just been an absolute joy to have, and I'm proud to have you as audience members of Higher Journeys. It's just, I'm tickled, and I want to stay in touch with both of you, and I hope you stay in touch with each other as well. Make sure to get all the contact information to everyone. But in parting thoughts, Stephanie, anything you'd like to leave with our audience?
Just if you have an inkling that if any of this resonates with you, just keep at it and keep unpacking. We talked about the individual and the group, and finding that true part of ourselves. It takes a little bit of unpacking, but it's so worth it, because then that's when the real magic starts to happen. And yeah.
Beautiful. Oh, beautifully said. And Jason, what would you like to say?
I would probably say the same thing, maybe with different words, but the same exact thing. Follow your intuition, follow your guidance. Take note I would tell everyone that it would help me a lot is take note of your internal energy, not your mindset, but your internal energy, because I think that the internal energy can actually shift perception of the mind.
Oh, you guys are just on it. Love it, love it, love it. Oh, this is great. Well, listen, what can I say? Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you for reaching out to me. Thank you for answering the call. And listen, I know there were other folks that reached out to me and wanted to describe their experiences. And I bet for everyone that reached out to me, we've got a spectrum of experience, personal experience, but leading to a fundamental reality. A, that we are much more than we think we are, and B, I think we're being ushered into a reality that's going to be a million times more exciting than what we're experiencing right now. It's a great thing to see. With all the ills of the world, there are equally, if not more, exciting things before us. And so I, again, thank you so much, Stephanie from Kansas City, Missouri, and Jason from New York City for sharing with all of us. So again, let's stay in touch. And for you out there in the Higher Journeys audience, stay in touch with me. And we'll talk to you soon. Thanks as always.
It's been fun.
Take care now. This is about, as Stephanie said, noticing the makeup of your life and how it leads to now. Both Jason and Stephanie agree that this was a major ingredient in opening up to their unique encounters, whether through painting or persistent synchronistic experiences, meditation or focused intent. When we consciously apply these innate tools, the boundaries between this world and all others begin to blur, and that's when the magic begins. I want to once again thank Stephanie and Jason for their willingness to come forward and share their experiences, and to all of you who reach out to Higher Journeys every day to tell your stories. You are greatly appreciated. Let's continue to share our journeys with one another and grow the magic that exists within and between us all. Thank you, as always, for tuning in to Higher Journeys Radio. Until next time, I'm your host, Alexis Brooks.